The disappearance of the Greenland Norse colony is one of the most captivating mysteries of the medieval period, blending Viking exploration with an unresolved historical puzzle. Established in the late 10th century, this colony thrived for nearly 500 years before vanishing by the 15th century. During his exile, Eric sailed west, icy island that he optimistically named Greenland to entice settlers by suggesting fertile land. In 985 AD, he returned with a fleet of ships and established two primary colonies. The Eastern Settlement, located near present-day Qeqertark in southern Greenland. This was the larger and more populous settlement. The Greenland Norse were predominantly farmers and raising livestock such as cattle, sheep, and goats in the limited arable land along Greenland's fjords. Leading theories on the disappearance historians and archaeologists have proposed a range of explanations, each supported by varying degrees of evidence and tempered by limitations. Below, we explore these theories in depth. 1. Climate change. The Little Ice Age. What happened? The Little Ice Age, a period of cooling that began around the 14th century, brought colder temperatures and harsher conditions to the North Atlantic, including Greenland. To supplement their diet and economy, they hunted local wildlife, including seals, walruses, and caribou. Increased sea ice could have disrupted hunting and fishing, leading to food shortages. Some suggest that tensions or outright conflict between the two groups contributed to the colony's collapse. Archaeological findings, such as shifts in the Norse diet toward marine resources, suggest farming became less sustainable. One of their most valuable exports was walrus ivory, highly sought after in Europe for crafting luxury goods. Their society mirrored medieval European life in remarkable ways. They constructed stone churches, including a cathedral at Gardar in the Eastern Settlement. Some argue the groups might have traded or coexisted at times, and even had a bishop appointed by the Norwegian Church, reflecting their ties to Christianity and European culture. By the 14th century, shifting European economies and trade routes may have left them isolated. The absence of new trade goods in later archaeological layers supports this isolation. They traded with Iceland, Norway, and beyond, importing essentials like iron and timber resources scarce in Greenland while exporting ivory and other goods. The Black Death in Europe and reduced shipping to the North Atlantic likely cut them off further. Using turf and stone for building, they adapted to the rugged landscape, creating a resilient community that persisted for centuries despite the challenges of their environment. The Inuit, skilled in Arctic survival, might have had an advantage over the Norse, who were less adapted to the changing environment. However, archaeological evidence of widespread violence such as mass graves or weapon damage is minimal. The mystery of their disappearances. Greenland, Norse, maintained contact with Europe into the early 15th century. The last documented event was a marriage recorded in 1408, and a ship from Iceland visited around 1410. Others suggest they assimilated with the Inuit, blending into their population. Assimilation might mean they adopted Inuit ways, abandoning their European identity. Yet, by the time European explorers returned in the 18th century, the settlements were deserted, with no clear trace of the inhabitants. A few mixed artifacts hint at interaction, but it's inconclusive. What caused this once thriving colony to vanish? We'll explore who these people were and delve deeply into the leading theories about their disappearance, providing a comprehensive look at this enigmatic chapter of history. Who were the Greenland Norse? Malnutrition from overhunting or crop failures might have weakened them over time. The Greenland Norse were descendants of Viking explorers and settlers, primarily from Norway and Iceland, who carved out a life in one of the harshest environments of the medieval world. Their story begins with Eric the Red, a Norse adventurer exiled from Iceland around 982 AD due to the Western Settlement. Situated further north near modern Nuuk, it was smaller and more isolated. A likely scenario might look like this. Climate change strained agriculture and hunting. A minor middle settlement also existed near the Eastern Settlement. At their peak, these settlements likely supported a population of 2,000 to 3,000 people. Over time, these pressures may have led to a gradual decline, some dying out, others perhaps leaving, until the settlements were empty. Conclusions: Greenland Norse were a resilient people who built a remarkable society in an unforgiving land, only to vanish under mysterious circumstances. Theories like climate change, Inuit conflict, trade, collapse, environmental damage, migration, and disease offer compelling pieces of the puzzle, but none fully solve it alone. Their disappearance likely stemmed from a cascade of challenges that overwhelmed their ability to adapt, leaving behind silent ruins and a story that continues to intrigue us. Ongoing research through archaeology, climate science, and genetics may yet uncover more clues, but for now, the fate of the Greenland North remains a haunting historical enigma. While the exact reasons remain elusive, several leading theories attempt to explain their fate, often suggesting that multiple factors combined to bring about their downfall. How it affected them. Shorter growing seasons likely made farming nearly impossible, threatening their livestock-based economy. Evidence, ice core samples, and climate records confirm a significant temperature drop during this period. Strengths. The timing aligns closely with the colony's decline, and the environmental stress would have challenged their way of life. Weaknesses. The Norse had survived earlier, cold spells, raising questions about why they couldn't adapt this time perhaps, due to the severity of the Little Ice Age or additional pressures. 2. Conflict with the Inuit. What happened? The Inuit, indigenous Arctic peoples, arrived in Greenland from the north around the 13th century, overlapping with the Norse present. How it affected them. Competition over resources like hunting grounds may have sparked skirmishes. Evidence Norse sagas mention encounters with Skrallings, hinting at hostility. Strengths. Cultural differences and resource competition provide a plausible motive for conflict. Weaknesses. The lack of clear evidence for large-scale fighting suggests that if conflict occurred, it may have been sporadic rather than decisive. 3. Economic isolation and trade decline. What happened? The Greenland Norse depended on trade with Europe for vital goods like iron and timber. How it affected them? The decline of the walrus ivory trade, possibly due to competition from African elephant ivory, weakened their economy. Evidence. Historical records show European contact dwindling after the 13th century, with the last known ship arriving around 1410. Strengths. Loss of trade would have crippled their ability to maintain tools, buildings, and ships, undermining their survival. Weaknesses. They had managed with limited contact for centuries, suggesting trade decline alone might not explain their disappearance unless paired with other 4. Environmental degradation. What happened? Overgrazing by livestock, deforestation for fuel and construction, and soil erosion may have degraded Greenland's fragile ecosystem beyond recovery. How it affected them. Stripped vegetation and eroded soils would have reduced pasture land and crop yields, making it harder to feed both people and animals. Evidence. Archaeological sites reveal overgrazed landscapes and a decline in tree pollen over time, indicating soil analysis shows signs of erosion in the settlements. Strengths. This theory aligns with the Norse's heavy reliance on farming, a practice ill-suited to Greenland's delicate environment. Weaknesses. Environmental damage likely built up gradually, and it is unclear why it became a tipping point. After centuries of adaptation perhaps, it was exacerbated by climate change. 5. Migration or assimilation. What happened? Some propose the Norse migrated back to Iceland or Norway, or even to North America, seeking better conditions. How it affected them. Migration would explain the lack of bodies or evidence of mass death in the settlements. Evidence. There's no direct proof of either. No large-scale migration is recorded in Iceland or elsewhere, and genetic studies of modern Inuit show little Norse ancestry. Strength. These scenarios account for the absence of a clear collapse in the archaeological record. Weaknesses. The lack of concrete evidence documents, shipwrecks, or genetic markers makes both ideas speculative. Their strong European cultural identity also argues against assimilation. 6. Disease or malnutrition. What happened? Diseases from Europe or chronic malnutrition from failing food supplies could have decimated the population. How it affected them. A disease like the Black Death, though unproven in Greenland, could have spread via trade ships. Evidence. Norse skeletons show signs of nutritional stress, but no clear markers of a specific epidemic have been found. Strengths. These factors could have acted silently, leaving little trace beyond abandoned settlements. Weaknesses. Without evidence of a major disease outbreak, this remains a secondary theory, likely a contributor rather than the sole cause. A combined explanation. Most scholars believe the disappearance resulted from a combination of factors rather than a single event. Economic isolation cut off trade lifelines, leaving them without critical resources. Environmental degradation eroded their lands, productivity, cultural rigidity, a refusal or inability to adopt Inuit practices like kayak-based seal hunting prevented adaptation. The Inuit thrived in the same period by relying on mobility and marine resources, while the Norse clung to their European farming traditions, which became unsustainable.